This is the one thing that you cannot skip if you wish to dramatically change your energy, your emotional state, your thoughts, and therefore your perception and the physical reality that you are experiencing. No matter how many manifestation videos you watch, no matter how many hacks you try, no matter how many vision boards you make, no matter how many affirmations you say in the mirror, no matter how many feathers you put under your pillow, none of that will work if you have darkness inside you that you are suppressing. Here's why. Anything that you desire, okay, if it's the new house or the relationship or the extra income, you only desire those things because you want the feeling state that you associate with having those things, okay? So you want the money because you want to feel more abundant, you want to feel more at ease, you want to feel more secure. That's an emotional state. You're desiring the state because right now you lack that state. Okay, you have a perception that you lack that state. Even the relationship, you want the relationship, you want to feel the love and connection because right now you're feeling that you lack that thing. So it's not the actual thing that you want. You're trying to fill an emotional void and you think the thing is going to fulfill that void for you. But here's the catch. You can only experience in physical reality that which is resonant with your level of consciousness, and you will never be able to transcend or evolve from a particular level of consciousness, let's say one of loneliness, of lack, of limitation, if you don't deal with the darkness within you. I once heard an analogy from a psychiatrist on YouTube. His name is Dr. K, or he's called Healthy Gamer. Some of you guys might be familiar with him. He was in an interview before and he gave this kind of crude example, but it really drives the point home. If I give you a glass of water with piss in it and I add sugar, the sugar doesn't take out the piss. Okay. And so that's what most of us are trying to do when you're trying to do all these positive affirmations and add on all of these things and trying to just, think your way magically into a new state of consciousness. You haven't tended to the piss, to the darkness, to the stuff within you that is keeping you trapped in a lower or a limited state of consciousness. And so long as that darkness is still stored within you, it's going to keep your consciousness trapped at that particular level. And so long as your consciousness stays trapped at this particular level, your perception of reality stays trapped within your level of consciousness, okay? So that means your experience of reality is going to stay the same. You will not perceive the abundance, the relationships, the possibilities, the blessings, the opportunities ever that are outside your level of consciousness. So I think we're titling this video, How Suppressing Your Dark Side Can Ruin You. That's quite polarizing. It'll ruin, more specifically, your chances of progressing in your state of consciousness and in your energy, which means it'll ruin your chances of changing your reality, because the moment that you change your consciousness, your reality changes. So we're all pitter-pattering around here throughout this experience of life, and we think this is who we are. This is our forward-facing persona, our dominant identity. And we just think that's who we are. But no, we're driven actually in large part by our unconscious, by our shadow self, or by our dark side, as we're calling it today. What is this dark side? Let's just name it straight away. The dark side is basically all the parts of you that you have accumulated throughout your life experience that you have stored within you. They're typically parts of you that were created in moments of distress. And they're parts that you don't necessarily prefer, whether that's for societal reasons, whether that's because they just didn't feel good. They're usually associated with the negative emotions. And because they don't feel good or because they have negative associations, we repress those parts, okay? So those parts all add up and they form this shadow self or this dark side. And that's what ends up running the show for us. First of all, because it's dictating in large part our state of consciousness, our level of awareness. And secondly, it's automatically deciding your behaviors without you realizing it. Just to give you a really extreme example, if we take an average person versus an enlightened master, like all the enlightened ancient yogis, the spiritual teachers throughout the ages, super conscious beings, the difference between a regular Joe and a super enlightened being is not that they don't experience darkness, it's that the enlightened being does not store and suppress the darkness within them. And so, you can hear, even if you listen to like the likes of Michael Singer talking about when he met with really super conscious beings, they would speak about having anger and all of these emotions and experiences come up to the surface, but it would just literally come along and pass away. They wouldn't store it inside, they wouldn't make it part of their identity, and they wouldn't create what we call emotional blocks or samskaras within them. So I want you guys to really start autopilot thinking. Any experience that you wish to have in physical reality first must be an experience in your consciousness. And if you're trapped at a level of consciousness where that experience is not possible, then you need to work on your state and your level of consciousness first. Then the experience will happen automatically. And if we think about the effect of storing darkness within us, if we compare a normal person to an enlightened being who has a super high state of consciousness, so let's say an enlightened being is operating at the highest level of consciousness up here that we can measure, or above 700, and the average human being is operating below 200, so in the lower ego-based states of consciousness, being things like anger, fear, grief, guilt, and shame being the lowest state of consciousness. And what's the difference between a person who's operating in a state of consciousness down here and a person who's operating in a really high state of consciousness is the person down in a lower state has a lot of stuff stored within them. They've got a lot of illusion, they've got a lot of trauma, they've got a lot of past experiences. That stuff is clogging up all of their energy, and essentially they don't have the capacity energetically to receive divine energy from source. And so really the difference between a regular person who's in a lower state of consciousness, who's feeling limited and is bound by fear and has a very limited perception, and someone who's in love and who's open and is just experiencing miracles and blessings, is the person in the higher state of consciousness is able to receive more of that divine life force energy from source because they have cleared their system. They have the capacity to do it because they don't have all this darkness stored within them that's taking up all the space that divine creative energy could take up. And I reiterate, this is what you actually want. You don't know it, but this is what you actually want. You think it's a material thing, but that's just because your state of consciousness is telling you that, and it's what the thing represents. What you really want is to be free of the darkness that's keeping you small and trapped and limited and thinking that you are some powerless, fearful being, which is not the truth of who you are at all. So why have you suppressed all of this stuff? You're probably thinking, I didn't do that. When did I do that? I didn't do that. You do it automatically. Don't worry. It's not your fault. You do it automatically. And I'm going to walk you through some tangible examples of some shadow parts that are really common that I've seen in myself, I've seen in other people. It's a combination of both of those things so that you can get your head around how this actually works and how it looks so that you can start becoming aware of it in yourself. So let's start with a very common one that I see people who watch my content. People who watch my content, a lot of you guys want to be content creators as well. And a lot of you are wondering, how can I get over the fear of being seen? Why can't I just start? So let's start with that as an example. And so what this looks like is you probably have a protector part of your identity that prepares endlessly and that procrastinates pretty aggressively. So you may find yourself having so many things to do that seem like really valid things that are to ensure that you don't do the thing that's going to make you be seen. Okay. And so this protector part, the one that keeps preparing and getting ready and learning more and doing all these things that are not the actual thing and showing up online, if that's what you want to do. The protector's job is to make sure that the shadow part does not get revealed. That's its only job. And if you resonate with this, you might actually appreciate how good of a job your protector part has actually been doing. And so the shadow part that the protector part is protecting is the one with the fear. And this part of you, here's the key thing. This part of you is coming from somewhere, okay? So you want to directly dig into what this part of you is feeling and where it's come from. So for example, this part of you might be really scared specifically of criticism or of rejection, okay? And so there's a part of you that perhaps was rejected in the past, that was criticized in the past, that was hurt in the past, that was bullied in the past. And that part, that dark part, that shadow part that you've repressed is the reason why you have this block. It's ruining your chances of evolving beyond this current self and into the self that can create freely and actually live up to your full potential. Okay, so for the second example, we'll take a really common one, which is people pleasing. You might be spending your whole life trying to make other people happy, and it's at the sacrifice of yourself and your own energy, but you just can't seem to stop. The behavior of people pleasing, of sacrificing your own needs to try and meet other people's needs, it's not random. But if you don't address where it's coming from, it's going to keep perpetuating, essentially. So in the situation where you find yourself to be people pleasing, the people pleasing itself is actually a protector mechanism. And for ease, we can call the protector part of you the expressed part of your personality. And the shadow part is the repressed or suppressed part. So the protector part is actually the people pleaser. It's the part that wants to keep everyone happy, and it's protecting a shadow part of you that fears what will happen if you don't keep others happy. And again, this is coming from past experience. So this is a learned behavior that is now limiting you and keeping you trapped in a pattern. So the shadow part in this example could be the part that fears abandonment. Okay, because maybe as a child, unless you kept other people happy and you did a big song and dance, you were maybe neglected a little bit, or you weren't given a lot of attention. And so this is how these subtle things, or sometimes not so subtle things, that happen to us throughout our childhood and throughout our whole lives, compile into our psyche and our consciousness, fragmenting into these shadow and protector parts. So for this next example, we're going to go the opposite way, and we're going to go from the incident or the trauma or the stressful event and see how that manifests later in life in someone's patterns. So let's take the example of somebody who grew up in a really critical household, okay? Let's say this person had a very critical parent who just criticized everything they did. And one thing to know, when you're young, especially when you're very young, like under the age of 5, we don't have the capacity in our brains to take in the wider context of things. So if something is wrong, even if we're not getting enough eye contact, even if there's just tension around us, we have a tendency as children to internalize everything going on outside us and make it mean there must be something wrong with me. I must not be good enough. I must not be lovable enough. I must not be smart enough, because we can't take into account what's going on with the parent or in the dynamic in the household or the world at large. So we can only see ourselves, and then we just automatically think there must be something wrong with me. And this is actually an weirdly empowering stance to take as a child, because it puts you back in the driver's seat. If you think about it, when you're under the age of 5, when you're a child, you're relying on your parents. That's your sole means of survival. And if there's something wrong with them, your survival is threatened. So it's actually, in a weird way, it feels safer to say there must be something wrong with me, because then at least you feel like you can control it and you can maybe work on it and work harder to make sure there isn't something wrong with you, and that's going to fix the situation. So it's a weird kind of mental dynamic that happens with us when we're children. So a lot of people are rocking around with this false belief or this shadow part that thinks there's something wrong with them just because of something that was internalized when they were young, because they didn't understand the wider context and the big picture. And so let's say this is what's happening in this example here. So the trauma or the event is you were criticized harshly. And what shadow part did that lead to? Let's say it led to a part of you that feels like there's just something wrong with me. Okay, I'm just not enough. Super common, like I said. Now let's look at the protector part that leads to, or the expressed part of your personality that leads to. One that's really, really common is the perfectionist. So if you were made to feel, or if you had a perception that made you feel like there was something wrong with you, oftentimes that leads to hyper-perfectionism, because what does being perfect mean? There's nothing wrong with you. You see, the issue with this, though, is it's impossible to be perfect. And the moment that you do slip up and make a mistake, or you get something wrong, or something's not absolutely perfect, because you haven't dealt with this part of you that so deeply fears being wrong, if you get something wrong, it's going to feel like the end of the world. You might end up crashing out for a week. You might end up sabotaging your whole business or your whole relationship just because of one little slip up. Why? Because you still have this part of you within you, and the protector is not 100% effective. It's just a self-soothing cover-up of the ego. And more importantly, these two fragmented parts existing within you, it's fragmenting your consciousness, it's splitting your energy, and it's stopping you from ascending beyond the state of consciousness. So it's keeping you limited within your paradigm, within your state, and it's stopping you from being able to shift beyond that. And then this can show up in ways where you will not be able to start your dream business. You won't be able to do a speech. You won't be able to write your novel. You won't be able to do the things that your soul is yearning for you to do, because you've got this part of you in the way that's so fearful of being wrong that you're just paralyzed and you can't take action unless you think that it might be perfect, which is never actually possible in the first place. And this is why your dark side ends up ruining you. It keeps you trapped in cycles and patterns that resonate with that level of consciousness because you haven't cleared out the stuff that's keeping your energy blocked there. So you've got this database of things that have happened in the past, and it's not even the things that have happened. It was your perception and your emotional experience and response to the events. That's what's been stored inside you, essentially as an unfinished energy pattern. And the more you run from these parts of you, the more you suppress them, the more shame they're going to cause, and the more they're going to control you. Carl Jung talks a lot about the shadow self. He was one of the first to actually start naming the shadow self in the unconscious part of the psyche. And he says that the less the shadow is embodied and brought to the surface, the blacker and denser it is. And then it influences your behavior completely beyond your control, completely unconsciously. There's a quote that I love. I don't know, was it Jung who said this, but I had written it down when I was prepping for this video. If you can't face what's within you, it will be projected outward. So you better just start facing it. Think of someone who has a really obvious insecurity to everyone else, right? And that insecurity gets triggered, but they can't face it. So they point the finger and they say, well, he's an idiot because he brought this up in me and he shouldn't have said that anyway, right? Projection outward, because it's too uncomfortable to look at it inside. We run away from it. We point outside us and we just project it outward. But you're still trapped in your shadow. That projection does not release the shadow, however. It keeps it stuck in there. Here's the thing. So now you're probably thinking, well, how can I stop suppressing my dark side? The opposite to repression is acceptance, is allowance. And here's the thing. The spiritual path is a path of purification. I'm going to keep saying that until you guys start to get it. One of the truest statements I've ever said. And I love this analogy. Basically, I want you to think of yourself. I don't have time to do each individual grain of soil in the glass. I want you to think of yourself as this glass of water. And you've been still, you've been stagnant in your level of consciousness for so long that you don't know that you've actually got all this darkness, all this soil at the bottom of your consciousness, deep down in your unconsciousness, right at the bottom of the glass. But when your consciousness starts shifting and you start opening up your awareness, you start moving your energy away from the stagnant energy that you've been in, it's like you've turned on a tap and there's water coming in and it's filling up and pouring out. And what happens? All the darkness starts coming to the surface to come out and be purified. And so this is actually a natural process. It's something that a lot of people are dealing with when they're on this kind of spiritual path or in a path of reconnecting to their truth and releasing all of these illusions and false identities. People always say to me, I'm feeling worse, right? They'll start a few weeks in, they feel amazing. And then a few weeks after that, they feel worse. And I always let them know, perfect, you're on the path. This is the path. It's a path of purification. So if your anger is coming up all of a sudden, perfect. It's coming up to be released, to be integrated and released. If your insecurities are coming up all of a sudden, amazing. It's coming up to be integrated and released. When I started on my path, you guys, I had the worst few months of my life, okay? So this is why, even if we look at the map of consciousness and we look at the gate between the, let's say, the more constricted levels of consciousness, which is most of society, and then the more expansive levels of consciousness, the emotion that graduates you from the constricted to the expansive levels of consciousness is courage. You need to have courage to face this stuff and walk this path. That's your ticket into the higher levels or the more expanded levels of consciousness, and therefore the more expanded experience of reality. And so just remember this. Naturally, this stuff actually wants to come up and come out. You just have to get out of the way. You just have to have the courage to stop resisting it and suppressing it. You have to have the courage to allow it and to face it. I'm going to give you some steps, but just remember this. As you go throughout life, as you're reconnecting to yourself and you're meditating or whatever it is you're doing, when stuff comes up, don't suppress it, don't fight it, don't resist it, don't project it, don't try to defend yourself. Just let it come up, try to relax and observe. Okay? That is the most straightforward way I can give you to start allowing the stuff to integrate and release. And remember, this is the path. You're not crazy. You're not going backwards. When I started doing this stuff, when I had those terrible few months when I started on my spiritual journey, I think I've mentioned this before, but it was right after I started on YouTube. I thought I had already ascended in my consciousness. I thought I was already it. I was still very much controlled by these unconscious parts of me. Obviously, I didn't know they were there. And when I started really stepping into my lane in life, all of that stuff came up to the surface to be released because it didn't resonate with where I was going. Okay. It had to be cleared out because it didn't resonate with the person I needed to become to keep evolving to do what I'm supposed to do. Okay. And so I spent about 2 or 3 months with my deepest insecurities coming up. I felt like I was 14 again, which I think when I was 14, that was probably the hardest year of my life in terms of how I was feeling emotionally. All of that was coming up. I just felt like I was 14 again. It was horrendous. My skin broke out. I felt insecure. I felt not good enough. I felt ugly. I felt all of it. And I had to let it all come up and come out. Why? Because it was still there. I never dealt with it. It was stuff I had suppressed. I pushed it away. And now that I was ascending and shifting, it was time for it to get cleared out. And when I really stopped resisting that stuff and I let it process and come out, it set me so free from so many patterns that I couldn't even see when that stuff was stored inside me. So there were so many little things like I had this, entitlement complex when I started on YouTube. I thought like, oh, I'm doing this because it's going to make me feel special and good enough and da-da-da-da. Because I still had these hurt parts of me within me, I had all of these ulterior motives around what I was creating. And so what I was creating was not that good because it was self-centered and it was coming from the wrong energy, okay? So when all of this stuff came out and started to get cleared out, it really liberated me to become the energy that I needed to become to create in a much more open and impactful way. Because I wasn't creating from my trauma. I was creating from my mission and my connection to you guys more than I was creating from my own trauma or trying to soothe something from the past. So that was just under 2 years ago. And since then, I've developed a framework for dealing with your dark side or these unconscious parts of you. Because if you're going throughout life, if you're on this journey, they're going to come up. And I want you to have tools to deal with them when they do come up. Step 1, observe. It sounded like I was singing. And name. You feel the emotion come up. You see some kind of dynamic playing out within you that you don't like, that doesn't feel good. You feel yourself getting defensive. You feel your energy shutting down. You feel yourself wanting to react or snap or cry or whatever it is. The first thing you do is you observe and you name what's coming up. Anger is coming up right now. Anxiety is coming up right now. Insecurity is coming up right now. Just observe and name. That stops the autopilot response of just getting sucked into the experience. The second step, and probably one of the most important steps, is to accept. Oh, accept it. You're like, I don't want to. It's not nice. I don't want to be associated with an insecurity. Well, if you don't accept it, it's going to keep controlling you. You have to accept it for it to release. So whatever it is, I don't care how ugly this part of you is. I don't care how much you don't want to be associated with it. Accept it, because what you resist persists. So I've had this before, you guys. I remember when I first started learning how to do shadow work, which, by the way, this is shadow work. We're doing it. So this was back when I still had a couple of marketing clients. My YouTube hadn't really taken off yet. And I had a call with someone, and I really had to set a boundary in that call. And I did set the boundary in the call. But after the call, I felt really tense. Like I felt really, really off. I was like, it felt like a part of me was screaming. Like I just was like, oh my God, if I'm going to pull my hair out, I don't know what's wrong with me. And so I had learned this process, like, okay, let me go and sit with this part of me for a second. And I closed my eyes and I was like, okay, what is this? It was like this imposter syndrome, right? So the thing that I named was insecurity, inadequacy, okay, which was really not a nice feeling. And then I had to accept it, even though I didn't like to admit that what I was feeling was inadequate. If I hadn't have accepted it, I wouldn't have been able to process it and release it. So I saw I'm feeling so inadequate. I accept this feeling. I accept that this is coming up. I accept that this is happening. When you accept it, you're almost saying like, okay, this is an experience that's going on within me, but this is not all of me. And you take the reins and take your power back from that emotion the moment that you accept it. A little phrase I like to use to help you in this acceptance, whatever is coming up, if you're in a period of feeling a particular emotional pattern, you want to just sit down and say, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay that I'm feeling this way. Automatically, it should take a lot of the tension out of it. Automatically, that energy cycle of this emotion, this trapped emotion inside you that's coming from probably 20 years ago, the moment you accept it, you're kind of giving it permission to loosen up and start to become more free. This is if you want to go deeper. Step 3 is to identify. So this is deeper than observing and naming. You want to identify the part of you that's feeling this emotion, okay? So you can do this by journaling or by meditating. By meditating, you sit in a meditative state and you tune into your body, you feel into where you feel this emotion, and you kind of want to pull that emotion, that part of you out and just observe it. And you might want to ask yourself some questions like, what age is this part of me? What do they look like? What's their demeanor? And just generally describe this part of you. Again, this gets you to realize that this is not all of you. This is just one part of you. You can also do that in journaling. Just write down, this part of me is, write down, name the feelings, accept that it's coming up, and say it's maybe this age, it's this demeanor, etc., etc. Step 4 is vent. So once you have a clear image of this part of you, perhaps where they've come from, what age they are, what experiences they had, maybe you even know the way that they're dressed, then you want to let that part of you vent. And this is the part that can be quite difficult, but this is really, really freeing. So I do this in the shadow work meditation in my community. It's one of my favorite practices, but you want to like let this part of you say everything that they need to say, because likely what's happened is this part was created many, many years ago. It was repressed and it keeps getting repressed, and it just wants to be heard, seen, reassured, and validated so that it can release. Okay. And so when I had my part that felt inadequate, this was hard to do, but it was really liberating. And I did this in a meditative state where I pulled that part of me out and I looked at her. She was a teenager, and I let her vent. And the things she was saying, I would never say. Me, like the full me, I would never say those things, but she needed to get those things off her chest. She was like, who are you to set this boundary? This guy has 10 more years in business than you are, and no one's going to take you seriously. You're just some stupid girl. And it was stuff that I consciously would never say, but this part of me needed to say those things. I let all of the emotions of that part come up. I let everything she needed to say come up. And then, this is why the venting part is so important. Step 5, you now get to reassure that part of you. If you didn't let that part of you vent fully, you wouldn't know how to reassure them, okay? So your only attitude as like the observer here is to just compassionately observe without judgment. No matter what this part of you needs to say, you let them say it. And then you come in and you reassure them. So if you don't stand there in the compassionate observer, then you're not going to be able to fully understand this part of you. And if you don't understand them, you won't be able to reassure them. And then you definitely won't be able to integrate and release it. So an example of what you could say to this part to reassure them is, I hear you, I love you, I'm here for you, I understand you, I'm never leaving you alone again, I'm so sorry I haven't listened to you for this long. And then you can say, you don't need to worry about this anymore because, and give them all the reasons why it's safe for them to let go of this emotion, this fear, this hurt, this block. You could say the past is not the present and it's definitely not the future. I've grown up now. I'm going to look out for us. We are capable. We are strong. Whatever this part of you needs to hear. Oh, also another thing you can say is, we've got boundaries now, or you can ask that part, is there any boundaries you'd like me to set so you can feel safe to let this go? And then once you've done that, step 6 is to redirect that part of you. So in this situation for reassure, I had to reassure the part of me that was feeling inadequate that I was no longer, a teenager, that I now had all of this experience. I had to remind her, because she hadn't realized all the things that I had accomplished, all the things that I was now capable of. And once I told her all of those things, I told her I was listening to her and I was there for her, but she was safe now to let go of all these things because of all this stuff that had changed. Immediately, I felt like the energy of this part of me just changed completely. And then for the redirect, instead, so just to give you a tangible example, this part of you needs something new to focus on. That's what redirect means. So instead of, for example, being afraid that I'm inadequate and having all of this fear come up and this insecurity, now, because you're reassured that that's not the case, you can focus on hyping me up. You can focus on reminding me of how capable I am. You can focus on giving me confidence to go for things, right? So you want to give this part of you a new task, essentially. What you're doing through all of this is you're allowing the energy cycle of this blocked experience where this part of you was created, you're allowing that to complete. And then you're giving this part of you something else to focus on so that it can integrate and process fully. And you're doing that by actually meeting. So this is like an entity. It's like really a living, breathing part of you. You're meeting the emotional needs of that part of you that were not met in the past. This is going to set you so free if you actually start doing this and paying attention to the inner dynamics that are going on within you. You are going to become so free of all these old, unconscious parts of you that are holding you back without you even realizing it. And the more you release these unconscious parts, this darkness within you, the more your consciousness can expand because it's freed from these blocks, the more your perception expands, and then the more what you experience as reality can expand as a byproduct. This seems like something that's really scary and difficult to do, but when you do this, you're going to realize there's really nothing to fear. Like almost every single time that I've had a client work with the shadow part, or I've worked with the shadow part, when it's in the dark, it looks like this big, scary monster, like that visual we had at the start of the video. It looks like this big, like, demon, and you're like, oh, I can't even look at that because it's like this really scary emotion because it's tied to this really scary experience that happened in the past. But more often than not, it's just a part of you that needs to feel safe. And usually they feel safe immediately when you remind them that the past event is over and that they are safe right now and everything has changed. Your circumstances have changed. You have changed. Your boundaries have changed. Usually that alone is enough to make this part of you that's still living in the past realize that the past is over and they are actually safe. That's usually always what it boils down to. And so when you go into the dark and you finally meet this part of you, you think it's going to be this big scary thing. It's actually like this just little scared little hamster shaking in the corner, and it just needs some love and reassurance. I don't want you to keep writing these vision boards and affirmations only to keep staying in the same patterns because you have these parts of you that are keeping your consciousness trapped at a certain level. If you've been trying all the hacks and they're not working and you haven't tried this, this is probably the missing piece, and you don't know how powerful you will be when you start releasing these parts of you that are not even really you. Remember me saying that courage is the ticket to your higher level of consciousness. So have some courage, have some honesty, and it will set you free.